Hello, I'm Michele Holleran, CEO of De-Arment Consulting. Thanks for joining our podcast today, which takes a deep dive into the subject of brain health. Thomas Cuisine, the sponsor of this podcast, hosted the second annual Well-Being ThinkTank in Boise, Idaho in early August. We had an esteemed group of senior living leaders and brain health experts in attendance. One of the presenters was Rob Love, CEO and president of Love & Company, a firm specializing in marketing, branding, lead generation, and sales support for life plan communities across the country. Rob and his team designed and implemented a research project to better understand the perceptions of life plan community prospects and their attitudes around brain health. Rob, welcome. And what did the study look like? And what were you aiming to learn through this research?
Thank you. And thanks for including me in this. It was really interesting. When you first reached out to me about us possibly being able to speak at the conference about how prospects perceive brain health when they're researching communities, I think it was logical. You thought, hey, we're a marketing firm. We work all over. We must have heard something about this. And the reality is it's not something that we hear much about and have heard much about and have heard prospects asking for. They are very focused on wellness overall, particularly the physical facets of it and overall health and wellness, and focusing more on diet in general, but a specific focus on brain health is not something that we've heard. So it was really interesting to me to have the opportunity to partner with a number of our clients and friend communities to do this research and find out, how do prospects really think about brain health, and could this be an important differentiator for our communities?
Yeah, thank you. You talked to about 1,600 folks through this survey, and I'm wondering in particular about the younger senior group. Life plan communities are very focused on trying to attract people who are younger, let's say 75 and younger. So, what did you learn about their interest in brain health?
I think it's really interesting that you ask about younger prospects first, because that was one of the more surprising findings from the research, at least to me. I would have guessed, that those age 75 and older would have been far more focused on things they can do to protect their brain health and aware of things. And what we found was actually the opposite, was that the youngest people that responded to the survey were by far the most focused in a couple of different ways. And I would say the most aware of things that they could be doing to promote their brain health. I'll share just a couple of these with you. One of the questions that we asked was, how important would each of the following be in a prospect's evaluation of whether or not to move to a particular senior living community? And we asked them about 4 types of coaching: the availability of a personal fitness coach, of a brain health coach, of a diet and nutrition coach, and of a mental wellness coach. And you can see on the right-hand side that pretty much by far the most important coach to, and this is looking at responses from everyone, at almost 60%, was that personal fitness coach. Next was diet and nutrition, followed very closely, to me surprisingly closely, by a mental wellness coach. So that's another thing that we could consider for senior living as well. But brain health came in kind of a distant fourth overall. However, when we start to look at the details of how different groups responded, remember the overall response rate was 39%. Said that the availability of a brain health would be either very important or somewhat important. But when we look at that age 75 or older group, it dropped to 30%. So they were far more focused on a personal fitness coach, followed by diet and nutrition. But yet, when we flip and we look at our youngest respondents, those under age 65, and by the way, I'm not sure we said this earlier, but the people that participated in this survey are either on the lead base or on the wait list for one of 15 different communities across the country. So these are people that are already seriously thinking about moving to a community. So when we look at age under 65, these are already people that have inquired about living in a community. And now you see, compared to 30% of the age 75 and older population, rating this as very or somewhat important, it jumps all the way up to 50%, 20% higher for this age 65 and under cohort. We found something similar when we looked at, we asked people, we gave them a list of about 10 different things and asked them which 5 of those do they believe are most effective in maintaining brain health as you age. And again, this first slide you're seeing is everybody that responded to the survey. And there's basically among all groups pretty much agreement that regular exercise, regular socialization, and good sleep habits, are at the top of the list. Now, overall, a focus on eating brain healthy foods, that was kind of a distant 7th in the list, with only about 1/3 of our respondents placing it among the top 5. If we look at those people age 75 and older, again, it was right about the same. It was only about 1/3. But when we look at that age under 65 respondents, it jumps to almost 50%. And now it's tied for one of the top 5 areas of importance. So the younger prospects definitely seem to be more focused on things that they could do to improve their brain health. I think this has particularly strong implications both for dining companies like Thomas Cuisine, for things that they can do in communities that would specifically help them, help the communities in general. But just as you said, I think these types of programs could really help them attract younger prospects. And while we may not exactly be offering prospects the fountain of youth, we can, through proven science, and this is from some of the other presenters on that day at Thomas Cuisine, through proven science, we can help them keep their brains more youthful.
Right. Thank you. That's really fascinating. We learned through the Thomas Cuisine white paper that was distributed at the think tank, and folks who are listening today can certainly access this as well, that there is a 31% reduction in mild cognitive impairment and a 28% lower risk of Alzheimer's related disease and death if people eat a healthy diet. And by a healthy diet, we mean either the Mediterranean diet or the MIND diet. And you can read more about this in the white paper, but it's really a profound connection. And a lot of people don't seem to know about it, yet the younger folks seem better educated around this, Rob. And I'm just wondering, do you think the reason why the older cohorts aren't as aware of the brain-food connection is because of lack of education? Or do you think it's more about the fact that they perceive brain-healthy foods as not being as tasteful or as attractive to them?
Well, that is another interesting question. So is it about education? I have to admit, this involves speculation on my part. Hopefully educated speculation, but this was a survey, not focus groups and so forth. So, we do have to read between the lines a little bit. But I really do believe that education is a critical factor in some of the differences we see. And From what I see and hear when I'm in communities, talking with residents, talking with prospects, and quite frankly, what I experience in my own life with friends and family, I believe younger generations in general are much more aware of the impact that food can have on all facets of our health, um, including brain health and heart health, and particularly gut health, which impacts all of our bodily systems, including mental health and mental acuity.
Yeah.
But when I'm in communities and talking with residents, a lot of times I just hear, I want to eat what I want to eat.
Yeah.
I'm 85, I want to eat what I want to eat. And they just don't seem to be as aware. However, when we do focus groups here, we get back to talking about younger prospects again. We do hear a lot more interest in organic, gluten-free, vegan, and other food choices designed to improve health. So I do think it's something our field really does need to respond to. Now, I have to admit that when you're asking about could the reason that the older respondents were not ranking in that high is because a perception of brain healthy food doesn't taste good? I had not thought about that until now. But on reflection, I can definitely see that being a factor too. We know that people's abilities to taste food declines as they get older, particularly into their 70s and 80s. That's one reason older people tend to use a lot more salt than younger people. They just can't taste the food as well. And now we come along and we have to provide a lot of low salt diets for heart health. And to many people in this age range, the food just doesn't seem as appealing. Mm-hmm. So with that as a frame of reference, I could definitely see those older prospects responding to our brain health food message much the same way, with a bit of, okay, here we go again, more dull food. But as you mentioned a moment ago, that doesn't have to be the case. The Mediterranean diet and the Mind diets, you can have a lot of food that tastes really good. And you can have a lot of seasonings besides salt that really enhance the flavors of what we're eating. So I think that point doubles back again to what we talked about earlier about education. We need to educate the market not only that food and coaching and things can really improve your cognitive abilities, but the brain healthy food tastes good too. I think the younger generations have already experienced this, but the older generations, they just aren't as aware.
Yeah.
Speculation, but that's how I looked at it.
Seems like a logical conclusion to me. One of the things that I've observed in my long career working with life plan communities, and I'm wondering what your take is on this, Rob, is that brain health could be the big connector between the younger seniors and the older seniors. So many of the CEOs that I work with tell me that there's a disconnect between the two groups and that they may not see eye to eye on everything. But the one thing that everybody wants is to remember the names of their grandchildren, right? And so I think that this could be a great positioning opportunity for life plan communities that will appeal to the younger audience, but not in any way offend or upset the older seniors who are already in a life plan community. I would think that they'd be pretty supportive of putting resources toward brain health. What are your thoughts?
I would certainly hope so. And I think everything that we've done, talked about so far today, if we do a good job educating our field, then I think our field has just a tremendous opportunity to implement a lot of this and improve things in the future. And I think between you and what you're doing, us and what we're doing, and I'll talk about that in a second, Thomas Cuisine and what they're doing, and others, that we really have a strong message to get out there to the field. So since we were there in early August, I've already written a blog based on that research about the potential for brain health programs to be an important and unique differentiator for one community in their market. Although quite honestly, I would like all communities in a market to adopt it. But initially, it can be a significant differentiator for specific communities that's adopted. And it'll be published soon. And when that happens, I'm planning to send a copy of it directly to all of our client CEOs saying, you really need to read this. You really need to pay attention to this. Let's talk about this. We're going to publish an article about the same thing in our 2026 Senior Living Trends publication. I do several board and management education sessions each year, probably like you do as well. Mine focus on important consumer trends in senior living. And I've got one that I've already done about a week or two ago, and another coming up in a few more weeks. And I've added a portion about brain health based on these results to those to really begin to educate boards and leadership about just how important this is. But again, Michele, when you look at all the findings from this, I think there's a lot more potential here than just giving one community an opportunity to differentiate itself from a competitor in the market. I think, and you touched on this earlier, and so I'm really just reinforcing what you shared. I think this has the potential to help life plan communities significantly expand their markets, and that's in two different ways. If we can demonstrate tangible results, like some of the numbers you shared earlier, in maintaining and enhancing cognitive health as people age, I think not only might we encourage younger people to consider our communities, as you've mentioned several times, but I just think more people in general of any age are going to want to think about our communities when they realize that we can make a significant difference in their lives.
Yeah. Well, thanks for educating all of us and helping to promote this idea, because I think it's a game changer for senior living. And it's one that really hasn't been uncovered in a deep way like your research has done. So I so appreciate the fact that you were willing to take this leap of faith and explore this idea. My
Well,
final
thanks for inspiring it.
Thank you. So my final question is that there were several other presentations besides yours at the think tank, and so much was discussed after each of these presentations. What were some of the new things that you discovered at the think tank, and was there anything that surprised you?
So I hope this comes across right, because I mean it both seriously and humorously. But when I think about what surprised me the most, not necessarily about that day in particular, but about everything around it, was the research we did. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back on that. I mean, I learned things myself that I did not know and would not have guessed by that. So, and I hopefully helped other people learn things as well, because I've never seen that. So again, thanks to you and Thomas Cuisine for creating the opportunity, because quite frankly, without it, I don't know that we would have ever done that research and learned these things. So we'll see where we can take it. As for other things that were new or surprising, like you, I've known Ted Thiel and his concept for longevity communities for a good while now. So his presentation, and I know Pilar and I've met her before as well, that was a bit of a refresher for me, not necessarily something new, but it was really helpful. In a similar way, I really have personally focused on healthy eating and healthy behaviors. When you're in a high stress job, you need to do whatever you can to try and stay well overall. But the presentation by Dr. Holleran on culinary medicine. That was, I thought, really powerful in reinforcing a lot of the things that I've read and heard about food as medicine and how we can really dramatically impact our health through our food choices. There were two things I would say that surprised me, though, beyond those points. One was the HSK Architects team. They talked about evaluating and designing spaces from a legibility perspective. And that term was totally new to me. I'd never heard that in relationship to architecture before now. Maybe I should have, but it just hasn't come up when we've been doing master planning or designing with communities. Legibility just has not come up. And it means pretty much exactly what it sounds like it means. If you go into a space, is it legible to you? Can you read it and understand what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to go? And if you and I were to go into a space and find it hard to figure out, just think how hard it would be for someone with cognitive impairment. So designing spaces for seniors that are legible to them as they age, that's a totally new concept to me, but one that makes a lot of sense. And last, it actually wasn't from one of the presenters. It was from one of the attendees. And I'm not going to do a great job of remembering his name right off that, although I've got his card at home. But he was talking about a client of his, I think in Arizona, that runs a series of small, like maybe 10-person dementia care centers. And they follow all of these best practices for dementia, for health and wellness, cognitive health and wellness. And he was saying that this series of communities, their key point of differentiation in their market was that they were able to get about half of the people that moved into the communities for dementia reasons healthy enough, cognitively healthy enough to go back home. And that's just unheard of in our field. And it just goes to show and to reinforce everything we've been talking about here today about the potential that's out there for our communities if we really want to commit to doing this right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that it's clear that there was some groundbreaking information shared at the think tank, things that people had never heard before, and new discoveries that will really help us as life plan communities not only position ourselves well, but to really underscore the health of all of our residents, whether they be there now or in the future. Rob, love, it was a delight talking with you, and I thank you so much for the information you shared today and at the think tank. And I hope you'll join us again next year at the think tank. You made a great contribution.
Oh, thank you. And thank you again for the invitation to participate in the think tank and to participate in this. And thanks again to the Thomas Cuisine crew as well. I think they're doing an amazing thing for the field.
Agreed. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll be back with you another time to talk more about Think Tank.